All right, so this came up recently in a conversation that I had with a realtor, and it's one of those things that I forget isn't obvious to most buyers and sellers, and that's abstracting.
Welcome to Mortgage Made Simple, the podcast that cuts through the confusion of home loans and delivers exactly what you need to know. Fast, simple, and without the fluff.
So if you bought a house in Iowa before, you've probably heard the term at least, but if you haven't, or if you're relocating here from another state, this is usually part of the process that feels a little different. And real quick, if this kind of stuff is helpful for you, please make sure that you like, follow, subscribe to the show wherever you're listening or watching today. That way you don't miss out on any future episodes just like this. So let's get into it. At the very basic level, an abstract is just the history of the property. That's it. It's just a paper trail. So it's going to tell us who owned it. It's going to tell us what type of loans were taken out, who got paid, who didn't, any liens, any judgments, any easements, old stuff that may or may not matter still today. The older the house, the thicker the abstract. Newer homes are going to be pretty thin, and old homes more impressive. Now, most homeowners, though, they never actually read the abstract, and honestly, it's pretty normal. I've never read mine. It's not meant to be interesting. It's just meant to be accurate. But it does become really important anytime a property changes hands, because that abstract has to be updated and it has to be reviewed so that the title can transfer over to that new owner. And this is where people start hearing things in the process like we're waiting on abstract, or we're waiting on abstract and title. So let me explain how those two things fit together. The abstract is the history, while title work is the review. So typically the seller side is responsible for updating the abstract. And once that's done, it gets delivered to the title company, and then the title company reviews it, and then they issue what's called a title commitment. And the title commitment basically says, here's what's on title, here's what needs to be addressed before closing. So when someone says during the process that they're waiting on abstract and title, it's really just that sequence playing out. And most buyers don't touch any of this. It all happens behind the scenes in the background. And one of the reasons, though, that abstracts do matter is because of what can show up on them. So everyone expects that there's probably going to be a mortgage lien on it. And that's normal. It's typical. But you can also see things like tax liens if property taxes weren't paid at some point. You might even see a mechanics lien for a contractor that did work on that home and never got paid for it. I've even seen judgment liens that were tied to court cases that had nothing to do with the current buyer. I've even seen situations where a seller didn't realize a lien existed until it showed up on the abstract update. And then suddenly there's a conversation that needs to happen. And most of the time, these things don't kill a deal. They just create extra steps. But they do affect timing. And by the way, this is the kind of stuff that I do cover a lot on this podcast, is real scenarios, real examples, not theory or any of that junk. And if you haven't listened to some of the other episodes yet, they're all up wherever you're listening to them now. And that brings us to the next part that I really want to cover here, is the impact that it has on the closing timeliness. This is one of the areas where Iowa can feel a little bit different depending on where you're buying. So in metro areas like Des Moines, for example, abstracting usually moves quickly. There are more abstractors, more volume, faster turnaround times in general. But the further out that you get from the metro, especially into the more rural counties, the slower that it can move. So there are fewer abstractors, there's smaller offices, and sometimes the process just takes a little bit longer. And another factor is when the abstracting actually starts during the process. So in smaller communities, the listing side may wait to start that abstract update until there's some firm loan commitment from the buyer's lender. And that didn't come out of nowhere. Historically, I think deals have fallen apart more in those rural areas, and sellers didn't want to spend the money updating that abstract until they felt confident that the deal was really moving forward at that time. And it makes sense, but it also means that timelines can get compressed on the back end. And so this is where lenders have to really pay attention. Buyers and sellers agree to a closing date for a reason, and our job is to make sure that the financing side lines up with everything else that has to happen, including appraisal, underwriting, title work, and abstracting. So if abstracting starts later than everything else, it all has to stay tight to keep that closing intact. So if you're relocating to Iowa from another state, then this process can feel unfamiliar. And only a handful of states still even use abstracting, by the way. Most states rely on title searches and title insurance without updating the physical abstract that changes hands when someone buys a house. So if you're coming from somewhere else, it's normal for this to feel slower or feel different. It's not wrong. It's just how Iowa does it. And the main takeaway here, guys, is that it's really pretty simple. Abstracting is just a key part of the Iowa closing process, and timelines can vary depending on the county and when the process gets started. So if you're buying outside of the metro, you could expect it to take maybe a little bit longer. Ask early when the abstract update is expected to begin, and understand that title work can't be finalized until the abstract is updated and reviewed. So none of this is meant to be stressful. It's just easier to deal with when you know how it works ahead of time. And if you want to go deeper on this stuff, check out other episodes of Mortgage Made Simple. I break down a lot of these Iowa-specific topics the same way. And in the future episode, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into title work specifically, what title companies actually do, what they're looking for, and how insurance protects buyers and lenders. So if this episode was helpful, please make sure that you're following or subscribed so you can catch one right when it drops. And that's it for today. That's all I got. If you want to go ahead and see what options you have out there, go to clearmortgageplan.com. I'd be happy to talk to you and take care of you. I think we can help in, I think it's 22 states or so now. Thanks for joining. We'll catch you later.